Hi. We all had that moment in our backyard where we're taking over. It's 5 seconds, and you're Jordan with the last shot. You're Montana, and you're rolling right. And you see Dwight Clark in the back. You're Leo Messi, and you've got 20 yards for a free kick with a wall in front of you. We all did this, and we all came up big in our imagination. We know those names because they did it in the biggest moments. These are the clutch gods. Intangible is about finding the next one. Wide left. Do I have to say more? Not to Bills fans. We can all think of those situations where even great players didn't make the play. Tom Brady didn't win every game or even every Super Bowl. Putting the best players in the best situations and knowing who's most likely to make the big play is something coaches have lacked. Intangible is about finding weaknesses and addressing them. Coaches are a big part of this. If it's the World Cup and you're going into penalty kicks, it's easy to know that Messi or Ronaldo or Pulisic are taking the lead, but who's going fourth? Who's going fifth? 30% of these games go to the sixth or later players. And being right about who's going to make the big kick is very literally the difference between raising the cup and watching the other team do it. Intangible is about making that decision smarter. The changes in the college game mean they need to know who's clutch even more than ever. You're not just playing for glory and the admiration of your classmates. You're making the wrong decision about a college scholarship, that could mean $140,000 and rising. Add in NIL money, and knowing whether that 17-year-old five-star man-child you just signed to crush your rival quarterback, is he going to be the next star, or is he going to be the next bust? This all comes down to a simple question. Are you clutch? Inside sports, most agree that clutch exists. Me, I've always thought that choke definitely exists. But measuring it has been impossible because it's so hard to even define. What is clutch? We end up with these wobbly words like makeup and grit and guts. We took a laser focus on the ability to succeed in high leverage situations. And because of that, Intangible has taken this to a new place. What was previously untestable now becomes an objective score. What was once a feeling is now a predictive measure of what is a valuable, trainable ability. And yes, we've shown this is trainable. In fact, last year, one of our Division I programs, they had a pitcher they loved, but despite good stuff and a bulldog mentality, kept failing on the mound. After taking our test, we found out he had one of the lowest scores on the team. Our psychologist looked into his results, found that everything he had was fear-based. He was worried he was going to lose his scholarship. He was worried coaches were going to yell at him. So the coaches simply changed how they spoke to him. They got more inclusive, they got more reassuring. By the end of the year, he was the closer. A simple thing like that is not an intervention, it's not mental training, it's not a sports psychologist. So we're excited to see what other teams and athletes can do.
In 2019, myself and our team of industrial, sports, and military psychologists all came together to answer one question, which was, can we measure high leverage performance and then predict it? And then over the past many years, we now have thousands of tests administered across thousands of athletes, 30+ collegiate partners, and we have effectively established a mental baseline with the Intangible assessment across multiple sports and multiple different levels of play. A good analogy I like to use from my baseball background is spin rate. When spin rate first came out, it was a cool number, but now every 12-year-old knows what spin rate is in baseball. We are mental spin rate. For 2024, Intangible's goal was all about scale, scale, and more scale. Our assessment was hand-scored before, and we'd have to pay scorers $20 an hour to do so, as standard in industrial psychology practices. Now, we've built a full AI-automated neurolinguistic scoring model that can score this assessment in 15 seconds and can effectively test thousands of assessments and get this data into the hands of coaches and players quicker.
The test itself is in 4 questions, and it's designed to get to the heart of whether a player is likely to succeed or not in those high leverage situations. The key part of the test is an apperceptive test, where the athlete is asked to immerse themselves in a situation. Their reaction, measured by certain neurolinguistic words and phrases, really give us a score and a key to that sport. It has to be sport and position specific to draw out the right responses and get the accurate, actionable information. Years of work to design and distill the Intangible test is now in 6 sports and will be in 4 more by the end of the year. That includes American football, which was equivalent to creating 11 different tests. In addition, we also have 10 different languages. While our test is focused on clutch, there are easy ways to check this. In baseball, we've not only seen high-scoring players have a 12% higher success rate in those high-leverage situations, we also see high scorers have significantly higher standard stats. The same is true for pitchers across sports, whether you look at basketball and football with win probability added, or in soccer and hockey with their flavor of XG. This is a sample team report, which is very, very simple. Coaches like seeing the information presented to them simply, concisely, so they can understand it. When we speak to them, we always ask, which of your athletes is going to be on the top and which is not going to be? Coaches are often largely right. There's usually one that's much higher or much lower, and that's where they seem to focus. At the top of this one is a real athlete. Her name's Devea Crawford, and she's a 14-year-old softball player from Las Vegas. Not only is she one of the highest scorers ever on the Intangible test, outscoring a lot of pros, she's a 14-year-old playing on the 18 and under national championship. She's a girl to watch out for, and Intangible shows part of the reason why she's so successful. Our confidence survey outlines key situations in each sport, in many cases each position. Look, we all know that when the coach asks if you want the ball, you're going to say yes, if you feel fine, if you're ready to go, whether you mean it or not. Coaches talk about looking at the athlete in the eye, but are you willing to let your team put their season on the line because the coach thinks he can read that? Our confidence survey gets to honest results and integrates early into team routines so that coaches can find ways to get those athletes better, get them more resources before those situations even recur.
From a traction standpoint right now, we've seen significant usage at both the youth revenue level across baseball, softball, soccer, and hockey, and have also had some initial pro testing partners. And like Will said, our goal over the coming weeks is to establish a basketball, American football, and flag football assessment, and really by the end of the year, expand out into tennis, lacrosse, volleyball, and pickleball. Our ultimate goal is we want to have a fully fledged athletic director package for all major collegiate sports to be able to go in and offer this at a standardized rate. And really, what's next for our business? Well, that's the main reason we're here, to announce we're open for business. We're actively looking to bring on testing partners at both the professional and collegiate level, and we're interested in finding the right strategic investors to help take this business to the next level. One thing, while we have the time, I wanted to mention, we ended up skipping this slide, was talking about a great example, E.J. White.
Yeah, E.J. White, he was a player at a Division III school for his 4 years, but had a COVID year and was able to move up. He ended up taking his team to the College World Series. This isn't a guy you would expect. He's not the most athletic looking guy. He's got the big, thick glasses. He throws about 80, but he led the conference in saves and led his team because he's not scared by stress. He wants the ball in those situations. And with the highest intangible score on his team, it was clearly predictive that he was going to have the success he had.
So we'll leave it at that. If you're interested in getting in contact with us, QR codes there are for our email, and that's my little 6.5-pound monster who fully supports everything we talked about. So appreciate the time.
How do you connect it? How do you connect this to improvement plan, measuring improvement, if this is about trying to help people improve their abilities to have those intangibles?
It's a great question. I think the first thing we do is that we retest over time. If you have an intervention, whether that's working with a mental training program, we have some partners that we work with, though we're kind of training agnostic at this stage. We retest, and this seems to be a trainable skill. We do see after some 10-week programs that we've worked with, we've seen significant scores. We do see changes. Some of our players, the collegiate pitcher I mentioned, went up 40 points after his retest because his confidence was clearly up. The coaches were speaking to him differently. He had had that more success. So we can track this over time.
And just to jump in on that when it comes to what's actively used currently out there today, I mean, when it comes to most sports psychologists and seeing what's working and what's not working, it's performance, right? So if player's performing, it's great. When the player's not performing, and you go to the sports psychologist, what do they say? Well, they're probably not listening to me right now. Well, if they're not listening to me right now, what's the fix? Probably bringing in another sports psychologist, right? So really, there's a lot of turnover, and we think this could actually be a great opportunity for a lot of sports psychologists and those practices at professional levels to be able to actively test and retest over time to show not only what they're doing is improving, but also fine-tune the ways in which certain practices they currently use actually do improve to on-field performance or in-game situations.
Yeah, for mental health coaches and sports psychologists, a lot of times, they're going because your kid isn't hitting or pitching or shooting well. And if your kid isn't hitting, you take him to a hitting coach. The hitting coach, at the end, you say, is he hitting better? If you take a pitcher to a pitching coach, he's going to pitch better. If you've got a mental coach, how are you going to tell he's better? Well, for now, you're probably seeing whether he's hitting or pitching better. Yeah. But that's all retrospective. What we're trying to do is make it predictive as well as something that we can retest to check that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it's predictive and retesting, how do you make sure that in 20 years I'm not watching a movie about the plucky kid who NTangible said he can't make it, and he made it anyway, right? Like, how do you avoid that scenario?
Oh, that's going to happen. I mean, there's situations where somebody has such physical gifts that they can outcome any mental. If you can throw 99 miles an hour, you're going to get a lot of shots at the pitcher, even if you fail. So, we're showing some things where maybe somebody who's physical is failing, like Carlos, the pitcher I mentioned, that just didn't succeed because he didn't have the confidence, he didn't have the resilience. We're giving the coaches an opportunity to find a place to have him. What if you have a kid who's very mentally strong but not physically gifted? Do you take a chance on him and hope he's going to physically mature, that you can get him in the weight room, that you can work with him on skill? So I think there's opportunities on both sides.
So great example. One of the, or both of our partners, we've got Future Star Series, which is one of the third largest showcase companies in America for high school baseball, and then Alliance, which is the largest showcase company in America for softball. They're all about being able to build leaderboards here, and the idea of ranking these kids based off of a recruiting practice, so coaches know if I'm going to take this player on, while physically they might be great, mentally do they have the opportunity to perform well in those situations, right? And so we think this is a great opportunity where, it's innate in sports, we overvalue everything physical, right? And that's purely because we have never had an official predictive measurement and very accurate measurement on the mental side. Now we do. If someone throws 97, are they automatically the best pitcher? Or if someone throws 92 but they have the highest mental score, are they the better pitcher? We think there's a strong equalization here and a great opportunity to really revolutionize the way we've recruited, and obviously from a player development perspective as well.
Thank you. That's actually a good segue to my question, which is time on the court or time on the field. It's the experience that gives you the confidence over time. So you have on slide 12 the Wonderlic assessment, that this is 14.2x more predictive than that.
Correct.
I'm not familiar with the Wonderlic assessment. How does your assessment differ? And can you go a little bit deeper into the science behind your assessment and why you think it's superior?
Yeah, sure. So in 2019, I ran Baseball Development Group, which was Canada's first data-driven baseball training center. For anyone that knows Rhapsody and technology, we had the first Rhapsody before the Blue Jays did. So that was kind of our claim to fame. But I was connected to the lead IO psychologist who popularized the Myers-Briggs assessment. And during that time, I told him the Wonderlic was used, and he laughed at me, point blank, for about 5 minutes. And he said, do you know what the Wonderlic was actually developed for? Does anyone of the judges know? The Wonderlic was developed in the 1920s to select executive assistants on Wall Street. Why are we using this assessment to select top-level quarterbacks in the NFL draft? Do you want to know one of the main questions in the Wonderlic? Are you a lion or are you a zebra? Again, point blank. This is a non-sport specific assessment being used for this modality, right? And so I asked him point blank, I said, do you think it's possible to be able to measure this and be able to do it? And he said, only if we specifically focus on one thing. Because in job analysis, you're not doing a general sales contract or a general sales assessment. You're looking to find a specific role and what they're supposed to do. Am I a C-suite? Am I a sales staff? Am I marketing? All of those have different roles and different expectations. So we really focused in on high leverage situations, how players view themselves in certain situations. And I'll be very point and honest. This is not a personality assessment. This is not a communication style assessment. This is not cognition in terms of how quickly you make decisions. Those are all great to know and great to understand, but they're not predictive of performance. This is. And if you really want to make a change in terms of your in-game performance or with your team or organization or the right players to bring in, we believe this is the next frontier in order to do so.
On that last point,
Sure.
so I feel a lot of the executive competency assessments change over time.
Yep.
And I'm not sure using, Wall Street execs it could be, you could poke holes in the research saying in the future. So how flexible you think about that in terms of longevity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry if I missed both your backgrounds
Sure.
and your skill
Yeah.
set to be the ones to be solving
Go.
this problem.
Yeah, so my background, I played professionally baseball for a couple of years, if you can see by my build, and ran baseball development group, Canada's first data-driven baseball training center, and it got sold in 2019, and I ended up working in private wealth management for the last 5 years. Did this on the side in order to be able to build this up to the point where we had sufficient revenue. Went into this full time earlier this year, and that's basically my background on the sports side and work side.
Yeah, I was a journalist for 20 years. I actually was a presenter, a speaker here in 2011. So it's kind of I think I might be the first former speaker that presented at the competition. So I went into startups because I saw that was the way to go. I was an early employee at FanDuel. We had exits at Modus and ProPlay AI, and now I'm trying to find the next big thing.
Can you guys talk about the business model?
Sure. Well, you go.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to go with this. We go to college and pro teams, and they can do that either for teams, and once we get to having more, like I said, we're going to have 16 of the 20 collegiate sports, so we can go to an entire athletic department. We're also working with large showcase organizations like Future Stars and Alliance, and we're seeing broad uptake there where they're testing their athletes and making that available to everyone else. We can do a wider consumer, but we need to educate the market on what this is and what the need is before we do that.
What is the price point?
The retail is $99. Most of our partners get it at $49, and we do a revenue share with them.
Yeah, and one thing to also note as well, this assessment is not a one and done style scenario. This is something where we do see variance over time. An analogy we've been using is the battery. This is your capacity and your ability to maximize your mental skills and capabilities, but you need to retest this. So we retest this around twice a year, every 6 months. So every time we do a sale, there's usually recurring revenue just from that alone. Okay, great, thank you.